these special editions, Nikola Berger explores the careers of consequential international personalities. Nikola focuses on professional passions and special moments that influence their lives. Special edition interviews dig deep, highlighting life moments that shaped these change makers and their careers. We found inspiration listening to these movers and shakers. We are happy to share their experiences with you.
Stef Wynendaele.
Yes.
Very welcome.
Thank you very much.
We go in the Bitcoin and crypto world now.
Mm-hmm.
You are a specialist, an expert.
I will never call myself an expert, but I do know quite a few things.
I'm super happy that we can talk about the Bitcoin world. I'm very excited. And so, what is your position in the Bitcoin business, Stef?
So I work for a trading firm. It's called Kirok. Myself, I'm heading their institutional business. So I'm head of commercial relations. And as a firm, what we do is we trade cryptocurrencies algorithmically on exchanges. And the reason we do that is to provide a very specific service, which is called liquidity. The concept of liquidity, I'll try to explain it in the let's say the simplest, in the most human, simplest to digest way is, so the concept of liquidity is that if you, for example, want to buy 1 Bitcoin on a cryptocurrency exchange where you can do that, and you want to spend a specific price for that, it's very unlikely that at the same time, for the same price, somebody is willing to sell you 1 Bitcoin, right? We all are used to being able to acquire Microsoft stocks for your price that you want to pay for it, but it's rather unlikely that across the world there is at the exact same time somebody willing to sell that Microsoft stock for the exact same price. Now, the way that it is solved is that companies like Kirok, so companies like us, are always willing to buy and sell a Bitcoin at any time of the day for any price available, right? And as such, you will be able to acquire your Bitcoin or sell your Bitcoin into euros when you want to. And that concept is called liquidity. And ultimately, if you look at capital markets where we can exchange value for any type of assets, the definition of an efficient capital market is when those liquidity as a concept exists. And that is what we do as a company. So I try to explain it in the simplest way possible, and that is hopefully I achieved that. And we do this across 85 exchanges across the world, and we do lots and lots of transactions a day to be able to make people their lives easier when it comes to transacting cryptocurrencies.
How long are you in this kind of business?
Myself, I've been working for the firm over the last 3 years, and I've been in the cryptocurrency space for a bit over 5 years.
And Bitcoin is our future?
I don't know if Bitcoin is the future, but what I do believe is that it opened a lot of minds on how to transact value. And I think that is something that is inherently the biggest legacy of Bitcoin as a concept, is that people start to think about transacting value from one people to the other in a different way. And maybe it's worthwhile to explain you maybe what Bitcoin is, or at least what the true value of Bitcoin is. But if you think about Bitcoin, Bitcoin really is the first cryptocurrency ever that has been built in the world, right? And the reason why it exists and it works is because it's built thanks to a technology which is called blockchain technology, which is the first, let's say, blockchain network that is proven to be working. It has been created in 2008, right after the financial crisis. And really what Bitcoin does is it gives you the opportunity to transact value from one person to another anywhere around the world with just a computer and an internet connection.
Ah, yeah.
So that's the simplest way to explain it.
We don't need a bank anymore.
You don't need a bank. And that's also the reason why it's so revolutionary, right? Because unlikely any other solution that exists to transact in a digital way value, you always depend on a middleman, right? If you make a bank transfer from your computer to anybody else in the world, you depend on a bank or a corporation to be able to do that. And as such, thanks to the blockchain technology, Bitcoin, for the first time in the history of mankind, gives you the possibility to transact value at scale without depending on a middleman. And as such, really, Bitcoin is literally the first public payment system for digital transactions. And by public, I mean anybody in the world, notwithstanding their religion, their nationality, their wealth position, their sex, can just transact value from one another at almost no cost. And I think that's ultimately what the internet is for information. The internet is a public infrastructure, which means it doesn't belong to anybody in the world. It's a public infrastructure for you to exchange information. And Bitcoin is exactly the same for value. And that is ultimately the first mover in the industry, and is also the reason why it has so much value. To just also give a bit of side information on the fact what public infrastructure means. Public infrastructure, as I said, is not owned by anybody, and we do have a public infrastructure payment system already that exists, and it's called cash. So literally paper money, because I can transact €5 to you in your hand without depending on a bank, right?
Yeah.
I can do that. But it's highly unscalable. I can't do it to somebody in Africa who maybe needs the funds, who doesn't have a bank account. It's highly susceptible to theft. Somebody could steal my wallet. I can't rip up the paper to give you fractions of the €5. I need to have other exchange models. So it's a very unscalable way of transacting value across the world. And ultimately, the added value of Bitcoin is that. So is it going to be the future? I don't know if Bitcoin is going to be the future. And to be honest, I really don't mind. But the fact that millions of people across the world have realized that they don't need to depend on a centralized entity, and they don't need to trust a centralized entity that they don't see to be able to transact value is incredibly powerful, and is the reason why it gets a lot of traction. There's other USPs, and maybe we can cover them later in the podcast, which are interesting to cover, but I think that's my first, let's say, a definition of the value of Bitcoin, and the reason why I'm also excited about the technology and why I'm excited to work in this industry.
So what I understand now, the Bitcoin is for everybody, for every people. I was thinking more for the companies.
Yeah, it's for everybody.
It's for everybody.
It's for everybody, and it's the moment you have a laptop or a mobile phone who has connection to the internet, you can get your Bitcoin address, which is like a bank account. You can set it up in a few clicks for free, and you can participate in the transaction of value across the globe at no cost, or at least at a little amount of cost.
Do you know, Stef, I know that you didn't prepare it for the podcast, but do you know how many people, companies use it?
Well, you'd be surprised. It's going to be at least dozens of millions of people, right? If not 100 millions of people across the world who have a Bitcoin address.
And they have no euros or others?
They
anymore?
might have euros, they might have a bank account, and I also think you need to nuance that the way that people acquire Bitcoin is either they acquire it with their euros on a cryptocurrency exchange, on which we're active on, as I mentioned in the first example, where we sell Bitcoin to people, or we buy Bitcoin from people who want to get euros back, or you can be paid by doing work in Bitcoin. If I, with my Bitcoins, want to pay you because of work you did with Bitcoins, you only need an address. I send the Bitcoin to you, and you'll be paid in Bitcoin, which is exactly the same as being paid in euro if you are excited about having Bitcoin. So you'd be surprised how many people have those wallet addresses. Even read statistics that in the US, almost 20% of people have in any sort of form a cryptocurrency. And in many cases, that's Bitcoin. So the industry is evolving fast when it comes to the distribution of people that are participating in the network.
And I can trust everybody when someone said to me, okay, I pay you in Bitcoin, I can trust him?
Well, of course, he needs to send you the Bitcoin, right? As he also needs to make a transaction with a bank account. What you can do trust, though, is that because of the way the network works, and it's maybe a bit too complex to cover in this podcast, but if somebody sends you that Bitcoin, nobody ever in the world will be able to take it away from you, which is quite interesting if you think about it. I always tell to somebody that the reason why myself I hold Bitcoin is because it's the only asset in the world that nobody can take away from me. The network itself has not been hacked since 2008. We hear a lot of stories about hacking and people, committing theft with Bitcoins. It's always going to be because of either human failure or because of a centralized entity like an exchange who gets hacked. But it's not a Bitcoin network. It's not because a bank gets robbed that's the SEPA network of euro across Europe is bad. The bank just was not very secure enough and they got robbed. So it's always funny to hear that Bitcoin is failing because an exchange got hacked. Well, it was the responsibility of the exchange. It's a bad exchange, not the Bitcoin network itself. So what I always tell is that it's the only true asset besides your brains that nobody can steal from you. Mm-hmm. And I think that's rather incredible in a world where governments can take away your house because of unrest. And we're not talking about Europe, but there's so many countries in the world where that happens, or where because of a bank not being responsible with your funds goes bankrupt and you lose your money, or where even a government prints that much money, as we've seen with COVID, that your savings get devalued because all of a sudden there's 10 times more money in circulation and the hard work money you saved for is now devalued. So, which is also one of the USPs of Bitcoin, for example, because there's only going to be ever 21 million Bitcoins in circulation. So these are all things that in the world we live today have a lot of value because we accept that inflation is a thing, and we hope to trust banks that they don't go bankrupt, which they did in 2008, and we hope that the governments are responsible with the creation of money, which in Guatemala and Argentina and in Zimbabwe and even in Germany in the 40s, they didn't do. So it's really being able to have value without needing to trust a middleman of the control of that value, or even the verification when you transact value, is something that is highly valuable. And that's the reason why people trust in the system, not because of speculation, etc. And obviously it's highly volatile, but volatility is something that is also inherently part of a new and emerging technology.
So when I hear all about the Bitcoin, wow, it's super interesting for me. So I say, hey, Stef, wow, great. And now where can I buy my Bitcoin?
Well, you could give me now €10 cash and I can send you Bitcoin. That's possible.
How much cash you need?
It's so
minimum.
No. I think we can start with very small amounts. But just as an example, that is a possibility. Now that's not the most user-friendly one. You can also go to websites like exchanges where you can acquire with a bank transfer cryptocurrencies. That's a service that we as a company do at Kirok. You can work and be paid in crypto. It's all in the same manners as in real life. But you could go to any website who sells you Bitcoin. You could acquire Bitcoin on there, and you can then transfer that Bitcoin that you acquired into your own wallet. As such, you have that as a safe haven, and nobody can touch it.
Mm-hmm. It looks like so easy, no?
It looks like it's easy, and it will become easier and easier. I mean, it's great to see those startups provide the service of giving you the opportunity to acquire Bitcoins. But remember, in the past, it was way more difficult. The only way to do it was indeed Somebody gives 1,000 euros in cash and you get Bitcoin back. That's how it started, because ultimately the network is a network itself, right? So it's becoming easier and easier. And what I do believe is going to be the future. That's also how, let's say, older generations will be able to be part of this industry, is that people won't notice that the underlying value they have are cryptocurrencies. It will be just like the same old days, but big banks will do their settlement transactions on the Bitcoin network because it's cheaper, it's safer, it's more reliable, and people will just be able to transact value without noticing that it's crypto. And I think that's the next step. So you need to realize currently we're in a very technological space where everybody is almost a geek. So you need to be very knowledgeable about it all. But everybody's working on making it easier for everybody. And I think in the future, we won't even notice it's cryptocurrencies.
I don't know exactly, but we have one city, one country in the world who works only with Bitcoins. Is that true?
Not only with Bitcoin. So a few weeks ago, and which was announced a few months ago, El Salvador as a country made a big statement where they accepted Bitcoin as an official payment, and which means that if ever somebody needs to pay a debt, for example, they're also allowed to be able to pay that in Bitcoin, and that the one who has issued the debt needs to accept it as well. And I think that's a very strong message, which means that he can't say no to Bitcoin because it's an official payment currency and it's officially accepted by the government. I think it's a great use case. Of course, it's still a very small country, and one of the many reasons they do this is to also be able to override the central authority of the central bank as well a bit. And the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, was already very aggressive against it, which is probably the biggest validation of the power of it. Which is so it's still very sporadic, it's still very volatile, it's still a very big experiment of a very small country. But I highly admire the president of taking that bold decision, and I think that many Salvadorians or El Salvadorians, I don't know how to name them, but will be happy that he made that decision one day.
So, example, when I want to sell my house, and someone comes to me and said, "Okay, I like your house, and I give you the Bitcoin."
Yes.
And can I trust him?
Well, what you could do, and that is quite interesting, is that there's two things you can do. First thing is you could literally have him. Not the best thing to do, let me put it that way. The first thing is, and that's not the best way, is that you wait until he pays, and he does it, and the house is sold. Now, obviously, the reason why notaries exist is because they need to validate that, and they need to guarantee, because of a paper and because of a legal contract, that transaction gets executed. Okay. Now, what's beautiful about this system is that you can have a programmatic transaction, which means that a transaction will only go through under specific conditions. And there is a blockchain, or at least a cryptocurrency, that specifically does that, which is called Ethereum, which is the second biggest crypto. And they have developed smart contracts, as they state, which is very interesting, because what it says is that Nikola and I agree for the sale of our house for X amount of cryptocurrency. That transaction will go through. We sign it both right now, but it will only go through under the condition that Stef has enough cryptocurrencies to fulfill the payment, and that Nikola has also accepted this and this condition for that transaction to go through. So the programmatic payment of transactions is a possibility. It's already done in many ways and the many use cases. So yes, it's definitely possible to do that through cryptocurrencies.
And what about the tax? The bank is one thing, but we have to pay the tax.
Yeah.
Is this also part of the Bitcoin, or is the tax out?
Well, I can give you the very nuanced answer, that taxation is every time you sell a specific asset, a taxation is due. because of your local government rules. It doesn't apply in Portugal, for example, because they decided that capital gains on cryptocurrencies are exempt, which means that a lot of wealthy crypto people have moved to Portugal. So some governments, because of that, try to attract foreign money and foreign investments, which is a decision that they make. So taxation is a rule of the local government. Okay. The interesting part of it is, and that's where a lot of people deem it's also very valuable, is that the government can't force you to do it, which is the first time ever. And that's the reason why they're very, very cautious about this. If I tomorrow sell my Bitcoin for another cryptocurrency, for example, they can't enforce me to do it. They could, and they could put me in jail, etc. But if I really want to be stubborn, at the end of time, they can't take it away from my bank account because I don't have money on there. They could take away my house, etc. But they could do everything, which I don't think is a good advice to give, right? I mean, taxation is a good thing, and you need to pay your dues, especially.
You think so?
This is a professional podcast, so yes, I do believe so, indeed. Yeah.
Okay.
No, taxation is good, but what I do feel is going to be the result of this, and it's interesting because I spoke about it with somebody this morning, is that the taxation and the way we tax will be redefined. It will have to be redefined, because tomorrow, if everybody in the world pays with Bitcoin, the enforcement of taxation is going to be very hard. And I think that the beauty of the system is that we will start to challenge the way a government spends taxes, because first of all, it's going to be very transparent on the blockchain. You can see everything. So it's very transparent on how they tax the people. And it's going to redefine on how taxation is enforced. And I think it's going to make the world a better social place, because people will be able to socially control what the government does, but also feel the social obligation to indeed pay taxes in a country where a community is important. I mean, inherently, everybody in the world is social. We are animals that live together and we depend on each other. Otherwise, we don't survive. And I think the economy is a better place because of that. So the people will be able to come up with a system that is better. So to answer your question, if you really want to be stubborn, you're going to end up in jail, but they'll never be able to take your money, and you'll be a very rich man in jail.
Good. Okay.
Or you just pay your taxes because that's the local government rules.
Yeah, I think this question, many people have this question.
Absolutely.
In their mind. No? So, wow.
Yeah, and just to go back to the taxation topic, because it's interesting, is there is nothing as, let's say, unsmart or stupid to do than not indeed pay taxes, because it's very transparent. The blockchain is a tool where anybody can see what you've done from day one. The government is very smart, and they are already working with service providers to be able to identify what your crypto holdings are. So they'll be able to check what your transactions are, and they'll be knowing better than you do also what your taxation obligations are. And also the commitment of crime, because often it's a topic where you see hackers requesting Bitcoins, or you see criminals, requesting Bitcoins. It's not very smart to do something which is publicly traceable. Any transaction that you make is traceable. And if you really want to exchange it for euros or US dollars, you're going to need to do it through a bank account, which is under a name, which is the easiest way to find someone. If you really want to be a criminal, do it in cash.
Okay.
I'm not giving advice on this one, but just to let you know that there's a lot of stories, but a disproportionate small amount of criminal activity that is being committed with cryptocurrencies.
Ah, yeah. What can I say, Stef? Wow. I'm really flashed now. But you are super professional and we stay in contact. I'm
Of
a
course.
very lucky lady now. I have you by my side. But you are also for other people a contact?
Of course. I think
And where can we find you?
they can find me on LinkedIn. I am very active on Twitter as well, so they'll be able to find me there. And for the really technologists out there, I'm active on Discord, where they can also reach me. But mainly on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
you'll be definitely able to connect.
And when someone has a question, you answer, you
yes,
reply?
more than happy. I think that ultimately what I've learned over the years is that I'm, first of all, not an expert, because the more you know about things, the more you realize you're not good at it, or at least you're not an expert. And secondly, that I also do believe I have a nuanced view on how this is going to change the world or not. I mean, I'm not a maximalist, and I think it's just best to enjoy the journey and enjoy the learning process. So I will never be the one that says you need to buy Bitcoin. You just need to discover it yourself, and I'll help you with that journey.
Wonderful. Stef Wynendaele. Wow.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for this wonderful special edition podcast. All the best for the future, for the Bitcoin future.
Thank you very much. And you.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.